accuracy is always going to win out over speed. So if I could, make it to where more people would understand that shooting a slow, forgiving, heavy hitting, making your bow quiet is way more important than a fast miss. A slow hit is better than a fast miss. I got to get a shirt with that on there. I want to be able to facilitate people to get a good introduction into archery and bow hunting so that they have a pleasant experience and they too can relay it to the next person, because getting set up with archery is so important. It's like buying a tailored suit. It has to fit you the right drawing, the right poundage, so that you have a pleasant experience and that you're accurate.
So I've had some people ask me before, how do I come up with the list of guests that I want to have on the Rice Kill Elite podcast? In reality, I have a list that's probably, maybe about 2 or 3 pages long. And some of the names that are on that list have been on there since the beginning of the show, since it first started. And today I get to knock one of those names off of the list. Of course, today I'm privileged to have Travis T-Bone Turner on the Rice Kill Elite podcast, where he's going to drop all kinds of archery knowledge. He's going to be able to answer some questions that I did through our Instagram stories a couple weeks ago. I put in my story right before I talked to T-Bone, and I asked you guys if you had any archery questions, because I had an archery guru, so to speak, quote unquote, coming on the Rice Kill Elite podcast. So today I get the opportunity to share some of T-Bone's knowledge on answering some of those common archery questions. So thank you guys for joining me on the Rice Kill Elite podcast today. My name is Tyler Pruitt. I am the host and the founder of the Rice Kill Elite podcast. I appreciate you taking some time to listen to the Rice Kill Elite podcast today. I do have a couple of announcements before we get into my conversation with T-Bone. First of all, I want to let you guys know that the Rice Kill Elite podcast is listener supported as of right now. All right, so what that means is that you guys have the opportunity to directly support the Rice Kill Elite podcast and be able to help grow the audio experience for listeners and for my guest. All right, so just to kind of give you a little bit of the insides, I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit on what I plan to use this support for, and that is to basically increase the visual experience of the Rice Kill Elite podcast. All right, so what I mean by that is that I know a lot of you guys, you probably listen to multiple podcasts. I do too. There's a lot of podcasts out there that I enjoy listening to on the podcast platform on my phone, but I also enjoy watching the interviews on YouTube. So that's exactly what I want to kind of implement with the Rice Kill Elite podcast, where I'll be able to do a video type interview with my guest. And of course, those type of subscriptions, they cost a little bit of money. So that's exactly what your support for the Rice Kill Elite podcast will be put towards. So hopefully that'll be something that I'll be able to implement here soon. And if you are interested in supporting the Rice Kill Elite podcast, then head to the link that is down in the show notes. It'll say the Rice Kill Elite podcast is listener supported. Click here to support. All right, so just click on that and see how you can help the Rice Kill Elite podcast today. Now also, like I mentioned before, I'm active on Instagram, so be sure you follow me on Instagram at the handle @RiceKillEat. I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/RKEafield. So make sure that you connect with me on those social media accounts. I like to share some additional content in addition to, of course, this Rice Kill Elite podcast show. So make sure that you guys are connecting with me there. All right, so again, I am privileged with the opportunity to be able to mark one of the big names that I've had on my potential guest list for a long time, because he's now on the Rice Kill Elite podcast. So, of course, today, my guest is Travis T-Bone Turner. So in case you don't know who T-Bone is, he is a professional archer who has competed in competitive archery, and he's also an avid bow hunter. He is somebody who has worked with celebrities like Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Jordan, of course, Michael Waddell, David Blanton, all kinds of country music artists, baseball players, professional athletes, and he has set up their bows and instructed them on how to shoot their bows better. So he's the guy that has really developed a reputation for being somebody who offers sound advice to people who are wanting to improve their ability to shoot archery and, of course, bow hunt. He's also co-host of the show Bone Collector with Michael Waddell and Nick Munt. Make sure you guys are checking out his show, Bone Collector. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my conversation with Travis T-Bone Turner. All right, so we'll go ahead and get us started here. So sitting here with Travis T-Bone Turner, and the fact that I even get to say that is pretty awesome, and it's certainly a pleasure of mine, and it's certainly a privilege. So thank you, Travis, for being on the Rice Elite podcast with me.
Oh man, I really appreciate we've always enjoyed doing any media and podcasts. I mean, I, I guess I should start my own. It seems like it's very popular, but I enjoy doing them.
I think you should. I think that would be a great resource for a lot of folks out there, especially this time of year with archery season, that kind of stuff coming up. I know I
Oh
would definitely
yeah,
listen to it. So if you did, then I'll be first in line.
yep, chewing the fat with T-Bone, huh?
There we go. Hey, you already got a title and everything. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. So, uh, I think I saw on Instagram that a few weeks ago you were planning on going to Bowfest up in Wisconsin. So how did that go?
That was Bowfest has been in existence for I don't know 3 or 4 years now, and I haven't had a chance to go. Michael and Nick got to go last year, and they was telling me what a good time they had, what a great facility it was, and it's just basically it's like a Woodstock, but for outdoors people and basically archery. So anything you can think of, they've got pop-up targets, they've got any type of archery that you can think of, they got going on there. And as well, this year they actually included the OPA championship, which was $20,000 to the first place winner on that. So the best of the best was there. It's a ski resort, and it's in northern Wisconsin. You ride the chairlift up, and they have 4 large different courses that you walk through the woods. And man, there were so many people turned out. I think it was kind of iffy if it was going to go on with all the the COVID and Corona going on. But to be honest, I think the outdoor industry and outdoor population is just itching to get outside. So families were just coming in by groves. We had concerts every night. It's just great food, fellowship, camping on site, cabins on site. It was just a great outdoor get together and a whole bunch of arrow flinging.
Yeah, that's great. That was the first thing I thought of whenever I saw that on there. I was like, how's this event going to happen with all these, all this craziness going on? But that's great that you guys were able to actually have it and be able to, of course, meet with everybody and get a whole bunch of people together and stuff. That's pretty awesome. I'm very much jealous.
Yeah, I was kind of concerned. I actually always coming up to it, you was thinking like, I said, well, this is probably going to get canceled. It's been in works, but Mr. Larry and Mike Pollard, they have busted their hump trying to organize this. And Larry was the creator and owner of Block Targets. He's I can't pronounce his last name. It's kind of hard to pronounce, but anyway, Raised Broadheads, Raven Crossbows, and he was the originator of those and sold those companies. But he just absolutely loves archery, and this is his way to give back. The amount of money that he's invested. He owns the ski resort, so he's turning it into something that can be done, through the spring and summer months for hiking and bow shooting and stuff. So you can tell he's got a passion and a love for archery, and he said that come hell or high water, he's going to make sure that Bowfest is a annual thing and just an outdoor arrow flinging celebration. So hats off to him for supporting our love of the sport.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome that you guys were able to do that. And that's really cool that he's got that facility where he's able to do that kind of stuff, and of course being able to turn it into year round. I know a lot of people that have those kind of facilities, they struggle during those months because there's not much to do. And that's awesome that he's got that. Of course, that's a passion of his with all the companies and everything he's owned. That's great. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a great facility. I just told him he needs to flatten out the hills a little bit for this fat Georgia boy.
But oh man, but yeah, I think it's a testament though that like you were saying, like we're just ready to get outside. Like everybody's been cooped up in their houses for the past 4 or 5 months. We're ready to get out and do some hunting, ready to get out and do some arrow flinging and all that kind of thing. I think it's definitely a testament to the lifestyle that we choose to live.
Yeah, it's the best social distancing I know is 20 foot up the tree and nobody else around you.
That's right. That's right. So, of course, being T-Bone, of course, archery is a huge deal for you as well. So, where did all that kind of start with you, with your passion for archery, and then of course moving on into bow hunting?
Yeah, I guess most folks across the country just kind of, know that I have been with Realtree for some time, and if you can go way back to like around 2000, I played a character with Jeff Foxworthy, which is where T-Bone came from, and then became good friends with Nick and Michael, and then we started Bone Collector in 2007 and 2008. But way before that, I started competing in archery tournaments in 1988, and was fortunate enough to win the World Championships in 1991, the 3D championships, which was down in Valdosta, Georgia that year. And I shot competitively all the way from '88 to about 2002. I shot for Browning for 3 years, and then I shot for PSC for 3 years, and then I've been with Hoyt since 1996. So I've been with Hoyt for quite some time. But I competed at all the IBOs, all the ASAs, and in the pro division. And I'm not saying I by no means was I a Levi Morgan, but maybe I made a few folks laugh on the range, and I'd scare them occasionally and get in there and get me a paycheck, one of those Happy Gilmore checks. So had fun doing that. But as I got older, I opened my own archery shop in '94 and had my own archery shop and was touring around the country and just immersed myself into the industry, just knowing that I wanted to do something in the industry. I'd worked for Mercedes-Benz for 9 years before that, and I said, yeah, I just don't want to turn wrenches all my life. So I took a pay cut, and while I still could, I wasn't married, didn't have kids. I said, I'm just going to try something in the outdoor industry. I can always go back and work on cars, or I had a 2-year degree for heating and air conditioning, so I could have done that. And my uncles and my dad and my elders, they always told me, said, pursue your passion, and you'll never feel like you worked a day in your life. And I just knew that I wanted to do something in the outdoors, and that holds true. You work something that you love. I working 80 hours a week working on archery back in the early '90s, and I mean, I was ready to work 120 hours. I just loved it, and little by little, you look at it as a journey, not a destination, and before you know it, doors are opening, and I'm shooting for companies, and Realtree asked me to be a part of their video stuff, and I was doing all the work for their celebrities and people they were having, because Realtree is just based 45 minutes down the road, and I was facilitating all their employees and the people that they would have hunting with them. And then they asked me to play the character of T-Bone with Jeff Foxworthy in 1999 and 2000. And about that same time, I'm starting a family. My wife, my son, he was born in 2005, and kind of graduated from, or switched gears, I should say, from target archery. Still had my store, and then started doing more stuff with television and bow hunting. And I never thought, I come from humble beginnings. I never thought I'd be traveling around the country, getting to hunt, with Realtree and stuff. And I was just proud that I was getting to flex the arrows of the people that were on TV, and helping tune their bow, and maybe in some way helping them be a little more proficient archer. So that was my, I just thought, well, I've made it as a redneck. I've made it. I'm fixing bows that are killing stuff in every state across the country. And then, man, the opportunity with David Blanton, Bill Jordan, and them asking me to be a part of Realtree and travel, I was just like, God, I was in hog heaven. And then me, Michael, and Nick started Bone Collector in '07, and I sold my store in 2007. Just, the good Lord blessed me, and just all the stars aligned, and here we are now. And you look back and you blink your eyes, and when I started shooting competitive in '88, I'm like, wow, this has been a really enjoyable ride. And I always like to say this when I tell my story. Me and Michael always have this talk, because Michael and Nick both come from humble beginnings too. We're so blessed to get to do what we do, and to have this platform, and we stay humble by that. And it's not hard to do, but we always have this plan B conversation. Michael and I do. It's like, man, when we started Bone Collector, we thought, well, man, this might go for 2 or 3 years, and then, we'll move on to the next thing. You don't know how it's going to do. You prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And, here we are 13 years later, and still doing good, and able to do this for a living. And then the plan B conversation is always like this. I'm like, gosh, if things fade away next year, I'm like, surely somebody will hire me to let me fletch arrows in their shop. Or Michael's like, yeah, he goes, my dad, Paul, he goes, he's still in good shape. He goes, I'm sure we can still hang sheetrock and run a construction crew. So I really think it. And Nick was a barber before this, so we all had those conversations. It's like, man, this is good, but we're living the dream. This can't last forever. Just keep on going and going, and then then you think, well, if this goes, at least I'll be able to fletch hairs or work on, twist somebody's string up in a shop. So I think it's real good that we do stay grounded, so to speak, and appreciative of each year that we're given to live out our dream career.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Those humble beginnings. I mean, a lot of people who've had successes over the years and throughout their careers and life and stuff, the ones that have those humble beginnings are the ones that seem to appreciate it the most. Because, I mean,
Oh,
that's,
yeah. Don't take anything for granted. There's so many people, in any industry, they can let their ego go to it. They think that, they kill one big deer, or they have a successful couple of shows and they think they've got it, and it's never going to fade away. But we're not guaranteed tomorrow. You got to live each day to the fullest and be appreciative of what God's given you.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, keeping that ego in check is probably one of the hardest things to do, because at that point you start involving your personal pride, and that's one of those enemies, the inside enemies that kind of take over before you realize it, because it can kind of masquerade itself as something that's the opposite of what it actually is. So dealing with that, keeping that pride in check and keeping that ego in check is probably one of the hardest things for a lot of people to be able to do, especially somebody who's in your position, who's had the successes you've had. And I'm sure that's something that you got to deal with almost probably on a daily basis.
Yeah. And then your family and friends from around hometown, they'll keep you in check. Especially if you got a bunch of redneck buddies that they're not afraid to throat chop you at any time.
Absolutely. Those are the best ones to have, the ones that'll keep you in check and let you know when you're getting out of line.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So before you got into hunting, with doing a lot of the bow hunting stuff with Realtree, were you doing any throughout high school, or was that kind of your first crack at bow hunting? Were you doing it growing up and that kind of thing?
Yeah, to go back into that, my dad, he taught us. He kept us hunting and fishing. Squirrel hunting was our big thing. Rabbit hunting. We would deer hunt a little bit, but not much. And honestly, archery wise, that how I got started in it is kind of a funny story to get you to 1988. I graduated high school in '86, but I got my first bow when I was 10 years old. My dad bought me a recurve for good grades, and that was probably the last time I made good grades. But
Motivation.
Yeah, he got me a recurve. It was a 45-pound recurve, and Dad was just getting me a bow. He just wanted me to have a bow, and he didn't realize that a 45-pound recurve was going to be too much for a 10-year-old. But I got the bow, and I would bend the string, and like so many kids, I just pointed up in the air and watched the arrow go, 200-300 yards up in the air and then fall back down, and I couldn't pull the bow all the way back. And the times I did get it kind of back, I'd slap my arm. So I had a bad experience into archery as a 10-year-old. So I fiddled around with it for a couple of months, but I was like, man, this is not for me. Here I am, 10 years old, and can't pull 45 pounds. So it was a negative experience. So you do a lot of changing from when you're 10 years old to you're 18. So at 10 years old, I thought I couldn't pull 45 pounds. Well, I'm playing recreational football. I start playing football for middle school and playing for high school, and I'm getting bigger, and I'm like I think I remember I was bench pressing like 260, 65 pounds, but in my head, I was still squirrel hunting and fishing and doing all the outdoor things through high school, but I didn't shoot a bow at all because in my head I couldn't pull 45 pounds. That's the impression I had, even though now I'm bench pressing, a lot, and I'm a lineman for the high school football team. So my buddies, I got out of high school, I graduated, I'm 19 years old, and my buddies were fishing, and I just love fishing. They said, hey, man, you gonna bow hunt with us? I got in a hunting club with them. And I said, nah, man, I ain't into bow hunting. All you do bow hunting is just you wound a bunch of animals. It's always so hot, That's ridiculous. I'll just wait and we'll gun hunt. I hadn't even killed a deer up to this point. Never killed a deer. I just not even with a gun. I just squirrel hunted and rabbit hunted, and I'd go deer hunting, but I hadn't killed one yet. And they said, well, we're fixing to quit fishing. You should probably get a bow and hunt and practice with us. That's what we're going to do in the afternoon. This is my high school buddies. we're out of high school now. So they talked me into getting a bow. I thought, well, I'll practice. And so I was worried. I went to the local sporting goods store. 3 of my buddies went with me. We're sitting there at the archery counter, and I'm getting my bow set up. And the whole time I got anxiety. It's like, how am I going to pull this bow back? Because I'm a weakling. That's what I'm thinking. And it's absolutely crazy that I'm thinking that I'm still 10 years old and can't pull 45 pounds. Never even tried to pull one of their bow backs, nothing. So I'm going through the motions. It was an 80-pound bow, and the guy backed it down to 64 pounds, is as low as he could get it to go. And he said, all right, I need you to draw it back so I can set your peep sight and stuff. And I said, no, that's all right. Just tie it in where you think it needs to be. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be embarrassed. I was going to try it at home where nobody was watching. So they're over there talking to a local guy that has a archery range, Dog River Archery. And they were having 3D tournaments. Well, it wasn't 3D. Back then, it was paper targets. This is long before 3D target. Had paper targets on Excelsior bells. And they was telling my buddies all about the tournament that was coming up this weekend. You should come out and shoot. But I'm not even really paying attention. I'm just getting my bow set up. Set up my bow. I go home. And finally, I got to draw this thing back. It's like, man, I've just spent, $400 something bucks on a whole bow setup, and I hadn't even drawn it back yet. So it's on 64 pounds. I'm at my house, and I'm like, okay, here it is, the moment of truth. And I go, all right, 1, 2, 3, and I about ripped the cams off the bow. I mean, it was almost like I could hear the angels singing, oh, like, I am so freaking strong. I'm like, man, this is going to be great. It's like all that negativity and all that anxiety just washed out the window. I'm like, man, I pulled that easy. And it was stupid that I was thinking this way, absolutely. So the next day, went over to my buddy's house, and we shot and shot and shot, and I was doing pretty good. Got my bow sighted in. We shot each day, and it was Saturday evening, and they said, hey, you going to go to the tournament with us tomorrow? And I'm like, there ain't no way I'm going to a tournament. I just got my bow Wednesday, and there's no way I'm going to. They said, well, we've never shot either. Why don't you go with us? We'll see what it's all about. So we went over there. When I heard archery tournament back in the 80s, late 80s, I'm thinking of 100 guys on a line in white suits, the pictures that you see in encyclopedias and stuff of someone shooting way down range. That's what I thought we were going to. That wasn't it at all. This was just like, it was a 3D tournament where you walk through the woods like a golf course, 4 or 5 buddies together, and you're seeing a different hunting situation every time. I was like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I love this. So we shoot, and we go get through the course, and we're tallying our scores. And out of my group, I won. I mean, I've owned a bow for 5 days, and I beat all my buddies. And I was like, oh, my gosh. I mean, my day was made. So we turned our scores in, and lo and behold, there was like 30-something people in the beginning. We were shooting the beginners division, and I won the whole tournament. Owned a bow for 5 days. And I'm like, holy, man, I guess this is going to be something I'm good at. I never was good at football. I was just a big guy on the line. I might have found my niche in life. So I won my first tournament that I ever shot, and I just couldn't get enough of it. From that day on, I shot every tournament. If it was within 100 miles of my house, I just immersed myself into archery, learning more about the mechanics of it, and the working on it, and trying to build a better mousetrap, like a NASCAR behind the scenes, but like a golf shot on the front side. So I just couldn't get enough of it, and I won my first state championship in 1990. I killed my first deer there in '88. I mean, that year I killed 3 deer with a bow. So, and archery and me getting my first bow in '88 created a monster, for sure.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And I think a lot of people, they have some of that early, I guess, I don't know, I guess the kind of reservations that you were having. I know for me personally, I was having some reservations. One of my buddy, he told me I should come over and check out, shooting a bow. I had some shoulder injuries and neck injuries and stuff with football, and I was really skeptical that I'd even be able to do it. So we set it on 55 pounds, and I was able to do it, no issues. And then from there, it's just like, all right, I can do this thing. This is something that I think can be done. I can pull it back, and I think a lot of it, looking back on, is that I was just using that really as an excuse for trying to prevent embarrassing myself.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. And so many people are that way too. And that's kind of what got me involved with Realtree and to where I am today. I told, when I got involved with Realtree, I knew my experience that I went 7 or 8 years of not doing a sport that I absolutely love, and I was so mad at myself because I got introduced to it wrong. So I said, what I want to do to give back to the sport is I want to make sure that I'm not saying I'm archery god. There's a bunch of great guys out there that are archery techs, but in my little piece of the world, I want to be able to facilitate people to get a good introduction into archery and bow hunting, so that they have a pleasant experience and they too can relay it to the next person. Because getting set up with archery is so important. It's like buying a tailored suit. It has to fit you, the right drawing, the right poundage, so that you have a pleasant experience and that you're accurate. I told the guys at Realtree when they started coming in my store, had these candid conversations with David Blanton. I'm like, I see so many, and granted, this is back in the late 80s, late 90s, but you see so many pictures of, photographies of bow hunting, and they'll be drawn back, and their drawing's too long, or there won't be a peep sight in there, and it's like, golly, at least take a professional, it's a good picture, but make sure it looks authentic,
Mm-hmm.
to where the guy knows what he's doing, maybe a kisser button, or he's anchored in right, or it looks like it's not just a model pulling back a bow. It's like a real bow hunting picture. So I said, David, I know y'all have a lot of celebrities and country singers and, baseball players or what have you. Anybody that y'all would like, I want to offer my services, not to say that I'm, again, the archery god. I just want to make sure that they get set up right. And David said, man, that is awesome. So, I would make sure that people's drawings are right. And I sold my store, fast forward ahead, in 2006. And, I don't have a retail store at all since then. But even now, I have an archery shop in my basement. My wife and I, we built our house in 2009, and I made sure that the house was at least 80 feet long so that I could have an indoor range and an archery shop down in the basement. Not open to the public, but just for my own, just because I love working on archery stuff. And I still, to this day, set up about 50 bows a year. And my wife's like, why do you still do this? I'm like, I love it, and it's what brought me to the dance. And I had Gordon Beckham, which is a second baseman for the New York Mets. He's not on the major league roster right now, but he's a 10-year veteran. He was just here on Tuesday. He just worked on his bow. I got Phil Phillips bow and people in the industry and friends and stuff. I mean, this time of year, nearly every day we're spending 2 or 3, 4 hours down there, and I love it. I love to make sure that people can get the most out of it and see the joy when they do still kill a critter. So as long as I can turn wrenches on a bow and help folks out, I want to do that, because it's a joy and a passion. It's my way of giving back to the archery industry that's done so much for me.
Yeah, definitely. And that, going from, somebody that is, owning an archery shop and that kind of thing into, working with celebrities and working with people who have a drive and working with athletes, people who have a natural competitive drive. How do you instruct somebody that has, that natural passion to, want to strive and want to get better at something, and, especially whenever they're dealing with something as technical and as new as, archery?
Well, it's kind of, it's, to me, it's almost like, we can get so interested in, like, let's just take a baseball player. It's like, wow, man, they're a professional baseball player. And it's not like I'm starstruck or anything, but, they're a master of their craft. They're the best of the best. And I don't think of myself that way as like being the master or anything like that. I'm still the fat, slow high school football player that couldn't pull a bow in my head. Which, again, it goes back to that plan B. I'm humbled by that, but you can tell that they're like as you're spitting information, because this is our life of archery. They're a sponge. They love the fact that they're talking with someone that has basically thrown their whole life towards archery. So there's a mutual respect there, amongst each other. So, and they're good about that. You can tell that, especially athletes, they're masters of their craft, and they know that they have to learn this on a conscious level so that it becomes subconscious. And and it's a hobby for them. It's a passion. It's almost like they're envious of what we get to do for a living as much as we are of them. So, at the end of the day, I guess it all becomes a job for each other, but there's envious of them. I will say this about Foxworthy. This is a feather in the cap for him. He came down, and, this was early on, and he was wanting to get into archery. This was around 2000. And he came down to my shop when I had a shop. It was when we were closed. I brought him in there so we'd have some privacy, got him all set up, gave him some lessons outside, and I'm talking to him, and he's not really acting like he's paying attention. I'm thinking, I'm getting big leagued, and this guy's really not pouring his heart into it, and I'm probably saying all this stuff, and it's just going in one ear and out the other. He's not going to remember it. And like getting him started, I said, after a month, you shot at 200 or 300 shots, come back, we'll go over everything again, make sure the bow's still set, and do another lesson. When he came back a month later, I told you he's not really paying attention. I didn't think he was paying attention or was just half-heartedly kind of going through the motions. He, word for word, basically spit out and did everything we talked about the first time we met. He's got a photographic memory. And after that fact, I worked with him a bunch of times, when we were filming things, and they could tell him a line. They could just say, like, hey, I'm going to go downtown, get a bushel of apples, and I'll bring them back to the house. And he could read it one time, hear it one time, and spit it and give the right mannerism to it and inflections perfect every time. I mean, I've never seen nobody like it. So I had him all wrong. I thought he was, the big-time star, half-heartedly learning archery, and, man, he was sponging everything I was telling him that first day.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's, I guess, somebody in his position. I mean, he would have to have a brain that kind of works that way in order to have the kind of successes that he's had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's phenomenal to watch when we do commercials and stuff. It's like he's working 10 times faster than anybody else there, but it seems, you would think that how he's so rested and relaxed and lackadaisical that you think, like, oh, man, this is going to take all day, and he's knocking it out in half the time you would think it would.
Yeah. So, for the average Joe, how important is it for them to find somebody who's an instructor and find somebody that they can look up to, that they respect? Maybe it's somebody at an archery shop, or maybe it's, a buddy, maybe it's a friend. How important is it to have somebody that you can bounce, archery ideas and, have somebody to critique you and be able to teach you?
I think that's a great question, and that's a great point, Tyler. I think that that's the number one stepping stone into becoming a better archer or improving yourself. Almost like a local club or clique to get in with, so that you can bounce ideas off, because it works better rather than trying to do it yourself. Unfortunately, in this era, we have Google, we have the internet. You can find about anything, but you really don't know what's the truth. And then you have so many people on social media that want to be an archery instructor, but you don't, they may be a 21-year-old kid that's just not afraid to talk, and they might be spitting out the wrong information. So you don't know what to filter as what is good information and what is not. I strongly, with archery, I can't stress enough how important it is to support your local independent pro shop. Most of the time, these are mom and pop shops. I mean, not that the mass merchant stores aren't important. However, if you're wanting to get that good quality setup service, the independent retailer, the ones that's been in business for a while, are the ones that you want to support. I know that if you shop online, and I'm telling your whole audience this, if you shop online, you're going to save a few pennies. But is it really worth it if you was to support your local independent pro shop? Let's just say you had to pay an extra $5 for that target rather than what you got online, but you're helping that guy stay in business. And how much a wealth of knowledge and how much joy do you get going to your local shop and getting to fellowship with other archers, bow hunters, and hunters, and all the knowledge that you get from being in there, hanging out, talking to the owner, and getting set up. So I can't stress enough how important it is to support your local independent pro shops because of all the things that you get. And you're going to learn about the clubs just like I did. When my first time getting a bow, we learned about the local 3D club. You get to go to the clubs and shoot. You get to learn which archers are ones that are more seasoned and more veterans, and things that you can pick up maybe from the old guys there that are 50, 60, 70 years old that are at the archery range. Yeah, they may not be busting first and second place just because of their age now, but I guarantee you they've got a wealth of knowledge from 30 or 40 years of slinging arrows that they can really help you way more than anything you can read on the internet. So, yeah, and being with like-minded folks is so enjoyable, and it just helps your passion grow. So, support the local clubs, support the local independent dealers. I mean, you can't buy everything from them, and it's okay to shop, but when you can, please support them because that's where you're getting the majority of your knowledge and good quality knowledge.
Yeah, admittedly, I have to admit that I've done a little bit of all that, and I've looked at YouTube, I've looked at social media, different folks, and I've gone to those big box stores that offer a quote unquote archery pro there, and I've also gone to local shops, and the amount of customer service you're going to get, and the amount of knowledge that you're going to be able to share, with somebody there in a local shop, in a local mom and pop shop, it's just, I mean, it's unprecedented compared to the other options. That's absolutely, from what I can tell in my experience, that's definitely true.
Yep. Yeah. And there are a bunch of people that you may want to follow. Once you can read through the quality information, there are a lot of folks that you can follow and get good solid information on social media and or YouTube. But a lot of times I try to stay away from the forums and stuff like that. I read through them from time to time, and I see people just giving out, I don't know what keyboard technicians or whatever, they're giving out information that's not necessarily good. They may regurgitate something that they heard 3 times down the line, and they really don't know the backbone of what they're saying. They're just know they heard it, and they don't have a good explanation of why it's this way.
Yeah, definitely. You see that a lot with a lot of different things, and it's unfortunate that there's, I guess it's good in a way because it gives us the opportunity to be able to share information, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of misinformation out there because of that, especially when it comes to something like we're saying as technical as archery. But to kind of switch gears on you a little bit, I wanted to ask you, being somebody who is who was a competitor or competitive archer, and then of course being somebody who's a bow hunter as well, what kind of similarities throughout the process of preparing for a shoot, preparing for a hunt, the actual shooting and hunting process, what are some similarities that you have found between those two kind of arenas?
Well, with competitive archery, with just shooting period, I like to compare archery to 2 different sports, and I might have mentioned this earlier: NASCAR and golf. And the reason I say that is because with our equipment, you can always change weights of arrows, vane types, arrow rest. You can keep tuning just like you would on a NASCAR, trying to get the fastest or the most efficient car that you have. Same way with a bow, you want something that's going to be forgiving but yet penetrate well. There's all kinds of different scenarios. So that part of it's the NASCAR. Now the golf, I love watching golf just because of this. It's the closest sport to archery, competitive archery, and the reason why is you want to suppress your nervous energy. It's golf and archery are 2 sports that I know of that you don't want to call up that adrenaline to get all the mass strength so that you're, in football, baseball, basketball, something like that. You want to suppress that nervous energy. You just want to use a real calm, empty mind. Don't let the nerves get to you. You want to just use enough muscles and to get the job done by lifting the bow and holding the bow back. You don't want to, really pour a lot of muscles into it and cause a lot of shakes and torque and stuff. So you want the archery shot to be like a gymnastic routine, basically like, how do you tie your shoes? You don't even think about it. You just bend down and you tie your shoes. You just know how to tie a knot. Well, you want the archery shot, breaking it down into 20 or 30 parts. I mean, even as much as your stance, your arm positions. The only thing that you can think of at the time of the shot, when you get down to the aiming sequence is, aim. That's it. You can't think of 2 things at one time. You just want everything else to be on autopilot. So in competitive archery, you want to become like a machine so that you duplicate the same thing every time. Well, the same thing you want whenever a hunting shot comes. You don't want to have to think about anything. You just want to be on autopilot and basically black out and wake up over a gut pile. That's what you're wanting to do. So I use it as, you want to suppress your nervous energy, and practice like you were hunting, like waking up in the morning and before you go out to work, instead of sitting out there in the evening and shooting 60, 70, 80 arrows, which is good. That's good when you can and having fun with your buddies. You wake up in the morning and take 6 arrows, and you got a 3D target or what have you in your backyard, and before you walk to your car, you shoot your 6 arrows. Pour your heart and soul in there, not not quantity shots, but quality shots. Not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. And pour your heart and soul into it. Like, you're not going to get 20 shots when you're in a deer stand. When the buck comes out or the doe comes out or what have you, you got a nanosecond that you got to make a decision and pour your heart into it. Bring up those emotions and that adrenaline and the thought and say, this is it. If I don't hit that dot before I walk to my car, I'm not going to be able to stop at McDonald's and get that coffee. And put some, make it like my is going to give me $100 if I hit that dot. Put a little bit of, make it a value, I guess you can say. Make it interesting. Pull up those emotions and practice that way. And competition does that too. I mean, like when you go to a 3D tournament, or if you're just kicking around in the backyard, with your buddies, and it's like, okay, 70 yards, we got a Coke can down there. Whoever's closest to the center of it or hits it, they don't have to go pull their arrows or something like that. Just those kind of things relate to an archery shot. So whether you're shooting for $10,000 or 170-inch buck, there's going to be nerves there, and you got to learn to suppress those nerves. And then there's a calming and a confidence when you're in this tree stand. It's like, man, I've been practicing for the last 2 months. I've probably got at least 3,000 arrows under my belt. This is going to be a chip shot. Just if you say that to yourself, don't be overconfident, but to know that you're going to feel a lot better knowing you've shot 3,000 arrows over the last 2 months rather than just saying, boy, I should have been practicing. Me shooting 30 arrows before season is not going to cut it right now. So you want to be able to handle those nerves. You're going to feel more confident in it once you got more shots under your belt.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of people that are in, first getting into archery and really getting into just about anything, as we mentioned, also golf and anything that's overly technical, is that dealing with the pressure once the moment actually arrives. And I've seen a lot of people, they'll put themselves in scenarios like you were mentioning where you basically gotta simulate the pressure that you're going to have, or getting as close to simulating the pressure that you're going to have, whenever that deer walks out, or if you need to hit the dot, from 40 yards or whatever the scenario may be. But basically putting that pressure on you, and of course doing it in a safe way. I've seen people that are shooting down hallways in their homes so they don't put a hole in their drywall or something. That's probably not the best scenario, but basically putting yourself in situations where you're going to have to perform at a high level. And I think that's something that I've seen with myself, and something I've seen with all kinds of people, that you have a different level of confidence whenever that animal does walk out.
Absolutely, because the way that plays out sticks with you for your life, and honestly, that's why we hunt, is for that nanoseconds of the buck fever or the deer coming in, and all this is adding to the pride factor. Meaning, like, you hung the stand, you picked the tree, you were hunting over this persimmon tree. The deer came in like you thought. You didn't, all these things are checklists. And man, I practiced for 2 months. My broadheads are sharp. My arrows are straight. I got the right release. All these things, little tiny splitting of hairs, add to the pride factor that you're going to remember for your rest of your life. And it's a lot like the more you put in, the more you get out.
Mm-hmm.
So many times I've been on a hunt. I mean, and I struggle with this, just being a big guy. I'm like, man, I wish I'd have lost more weight. But I'm on this elk hunt and I'm sucking wind like crazy, and I'm like, gosh, I should have been losing weight, all summer long. It's the same way with whether you're, man, I should have got a new pair of boots. These things are leaking. Now I'm sitting here with wet feet. All these things are checklists, and the biggest thing is during the moment of truth, am I going to be able to make the shot? It all boils down to this: the release going off, the arrow in flight. Did I pick the right nanosecond to release that arrow? All those things come down to, like, everything moves in fast motion, and then all of a sudden it's like an action movie, super slow motion. The Matrix, the arrow's in the air, and it's like, is it going to work? This is a deciding factor. Is it a fail or is it a success?
And that's the thing that I just absolutely love about the hunting process is the fact that it is a process. It's a process that really starts at the end of the previous season. I mean, you've got to start getting prepared for the next season once the last season ends, and it comes with everything you just said. Is just making sure that you have everything in place for that one moment. It's kind of like a marathon and not a sprint, because if you aren't prepared whenever that deer or elk or whatever it is walks out, it's going to show with your shot, and it's going to show with how you perform in that exact moment.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the older I get, it seems like I take it to the nth degree, like planting food plots, cutting limbs. I mean, like, I've been working since we've been at home for the last 3 months, preparing property and stuff, and I absolutely love that. My wife calls it diesel therapy, but just like trying to manage the land, and then sometimes I have a reality check. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm doing all this for a deer, but it's really more than just a deer. It's more than just, I mean, it's basically a daytime pride factor, entertainment value. I mean, you're getting more out of it than just, the cherry on top of it. I got a deer. You're getting, 365 days worth of pure enjoyment over the whole process, like you said.
Yeah, certainly. So, with it being right now the beginning of August, this episode is going to, of course, post in the middle of August. But what are some things that folks can kind of work on, right now with archery seasons coming up? If they haven't already started, then they definitely need to kick it in gear. But what are some things that people can do, right now? I know here in Kentucky, our archery season starts at the beginning of September. Some places it's the beginning of October. So, with the clock ticking, what are some things that people can do?
Well, hopefully, most folks have already started shooting. Usually it seems like, especially when I had a retail store, it seemed like July 4th was, it seems like that's when everybody switched gears. It's like, hey, we've got the family vacation over with in June. Kids have been out for it. It's all right now. Mama's happy. I did my family vacation. Got the summertime chores done. I'm fixing to focus on the hunting land and my bow and stuff like that. But a little bit more of what I was just telling you. Hopefully you check your bow. Make sure, if you haven't done it already, check your strings, check your serving. If you don't feel comfortable with doing that yourself, take it to that independent pro shop, like I was telling you. Have it checked out real good. Get those replaced. Don't wait till a week before season, because you want to make sure you get plenty of new shots on the new strings, and your comfort and your confidence level needs to be extremely high come season, so you're on autopilot. And plus, the archery shops are going to get really, really busy the closer as it gets to season. So, the earlier the better, as far as getting your product, all your new stuff. If you want a dozen arrows and stuff like that, get what you're going to be shooting, and then if you want, if you're having a good day with the guys, and shooting 60, 78 arrows, having fun, that's fine and dandy. But on a consistent practice schedule, try to schedule yourself, 10, maybe 20 arrows a day, and that's all it has to be. And let's just say you work, you work first shift, and you can't, you're not at home until dark or whatever. Set up a target, even if it's at 5 yards, in your basement, or just under your carport, something like that, and just fire, just execute. Close your eyes, or put a piece of tape over your sight, stand there at 5 yards, and just work that muscle memory. Just execute some shots, and you'll be so much more better prepared when it does come time to getting the aim a little bit. That's kind of the easy part, is doing the aiming. It's the execution that you want to be on autopilot. Basically, muscle memory takes over to where you don't have to think about it. So try to get some kind of shooting in at least every other day, even if it's just 10 or 15 arrows, just to work those muscles, because a lot of times those are muscles that we don't use but for archery. If you're pushing a pencil or typing on a keyboard, you're not really flexing the muscles you need to shoot a bow. Make sure that you get to work them as much as you can.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just goes back to exactly what we were talking about before. It's just that, practicing with intention and making sure that, we're getting prepared for the hunting season right now. I know I'm excited. I live in Kentucky, and our archery season, it opens up almost a month from today that we're recording this. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of those same things. I'm trying to get out and shoot. I'm not shooting every day like I should be, but I am shooting, at least a few times a week, and just trying to get out and getting ready for that.
Yeah, and all my relatives are from Kentucky. I mean, I don't mean to get off on it, but from what I understand, and maybe you could help me out on that. I think don't they have a 2-week quarantine still in place?
Well, we've got right now we have a mask mandate, which I think is actually supposed to expire in here in a few days. But we've got some things going on as far as what our governor's trying to implement to help. I guess with the transmission issues, and there's issues with the crowds and crowd size and that kind of thing. But as far as the quarantine goes, pretty much if you don't have to get out, then try not to. I think that's kind of how what they got implemented right now.
Yeah, because I usually open up in Kentucky, and all my relatives are from there, and I was wanting to open up in Kentucky this year, but from what I understand, they had a 2-week quarantine. I got to check into that. Me and Michael was just talking yesterday, and if I'm able to come up there, without a quarantine, I would love to come and open up in be up there opening day, because probably one of the best states. Which I don't mean to drive people to Kentucky for you, but it's one of the best states to get a velvet buck, east of the Mississippi.
Yeah. But yeah, over the summer we did have I guess they called it like a travel ban or something. Basically, if you weren't from the state, you could only come in if it was work related. But I think at this point, I think that's pretty well gone as far from my understanding as far as what we got going on right now. I think the biggest thing right now is just the crowd sizes, which of course, if you're hunting, that's not an issue. And then they have the public mask mandate, which again, I think that's supposed to expire here in the next few days. Is my understanding of it as well.
Good.
Yeah. So, we of course mentioned practicing and everything, but of course there's the technical side of it as well, and that's sighting in your bow. I think that's one thing that I know personally I struggle with, and that's something that I know you've posted several things on Instagram about how to sight in your bow. So, what is the most efficient and the easiest way for somebody to sight in their bow and get it ready to actually shoot and fire at an animal?
Okay. I'm just gonna assume. Well, it doesn't matter if you're shooting a slider sight, a movable 1-pin sight, or a 6-pin sight. This is the way I like to sight in my bow. If it's a high-end sight that's capable of being leveled, first axis, second axis, and third axis. Third axis allows you to level the sight to where you can shoot up and downhill. And what I mean by that, first axis is how it travels from the top pin to the bottom. We're talking about a movable sight there.
Mm-hmm.
And your higher end sights are capable of being leveled. You level your sight on the first axis. Second axis is level to where when you're shooting, let's just say you're on a football field, that you're holding the bow square so that it is actually level at 20 as it is at, say, 80 or 90 or 100. So that you're level throughout the whole thing. And that's second axis, where it's just simply level. And third axis is where it's level if you're aiming up and down. Because you can have your bow level second axis, and let's just say you're in a tree stand and you go to point down at a 45-degree angle, the bubble will show you it's in the middle, but it actually forced you to camp the top limb to the left or the right, and it will cause you to shoot out left or right based on which, if your top limb is leaned to the left, it's going to shoot to the left. If it's leaned to the right, it's going to shoot to the right. So it's real important, especially for those out west, shooting up hills and down hills at really long distances. It's not that crucial, for a 30-yard or under shot out of a tree stand. It's not that crucial. However, let's go back to splitting hairs. Everything that you can do, if you can tighten your group on everything a half inch, before you know it, you went from a 6-inch group to a 3-inch group. That's more forgiving, and therefore that's more accurate. So once you've got your sight all level, your sight's level 360 degrees on your bow, and your independent retailer, your pro shop should have a level, a sight leveler. Or if you don't, you can take a torpedo level and hold it to your bow or a door frame and make sure that your sight is level to your bow, so that when you're holding your bow level, sight shows that you're level. So, assuming your sight is level now, this is what I like to do. Take your target and you take another torpedo level, and instead of aiming at dots, which you can aim at dots, but this is the way I like to do it. Instead of aiming at dots or small squares or something like that, I take a level. We're going to sight in you're going to get your left and right ballpark wise right off the bat. You put a line vertical, and you do it with a level. The reason you do it with a level is because if you just draw a line on there, and if it's not square, then when you're holding on that line, it's not going to give you the correct levelness. So take a piece of 1-inch masking tape, you draw a line with a Sharpie, and then put the tape with that so that you know that it's square up and down vertical, and then you're going to do you another line left and right. And they don't have to make an X, so it's not like I'm telling you to aim in where those two cross. So first off, your first shot, just shoot, at 10 yards, make sure that you're kind of close to that line that's running vertical so that your left and right, you will hit the target. And then on the horizontal line, that's where we're going to sight our yardage in so that you have good yardage marks. And everybody starts at 20, and this is important in my eyes. Is you start at 20. Everybody has always started at 20, but I like to start at 30 or 40. Now I don't mean that like just go out there and pray to God that you hit the target, because I know that your first shot at 40 and you haven't ever shot your bow yet is going to be kind of scary. It's like, oh man, I hope I don't miss this target. Stand at 10 or 20 and get your, place your top pin in the top third of your aperture so that you've got plenty of room for your other pins to fall into place below it. So once you get that top pin set, not set by, set it without even shooting it. And then what you do is take and gang adjust. The gang adjust is what you can move all of your pins at one time on the side. So when you loosen up one screw, you're moving the whole aperture, and you're basically adjusting all the sights at one time. So when we set our 20-yard pin, or just to get the aperture centered where we want it, we're going to do it by gang adjustment. So you automatically set your 20-yard pin, lock it down, and then gang adjust by aiming at that line. And when you're aiming at this line that I'm talking about, the horizontal line, all you're worried about is staying up and down. You don't have to worry about floating left and right. It doesn't really matter. So therefore you're taking some of your nervous jumps out of it, and you can just float on that line. So when you float on the line, just shoot at 20 yards and make sure that you're close, a little bit close to the line. You don't have to be on it, because we're going to come back to that. Now we know that the bow, we're going to hit the target. We're not going to miss. We don't have a fear of it. We can make a good shot at 30 or 40 yards. Now back up to 30 or 40 yards and move that second pin into place. And we'll just say 30 yards. Then you shoot at 30 yards, and then you move that pin to where it's on the line. And what the line tells you is, if you shoot 6 arrows, you're going to know right off the bat, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to see that, say, 4 of those are above it, and then 2 of them are in it. Well, that would tell me the majority rules that, hey, I'm hitting a little high, so I need to bump that sight up a little bit to get me in the line. You want it to where the majority of them are in that horizontal line. And once you get that, lock that 30-yard pin down. Now, the reason I tell you to shoot the 30-yard pin or the 40-yard pin first and calling it home base is because bows today are so fast. Most of the time, if you're shooting like 265 feet per second on up to 330 feet per second, most people cannot shoot the difference between, say, 15 yards and 26, 7, 8 yards. Your 20-yard pin will cover all that up. So if you sight your first pin in at 20, it may be 15. You can't shoot the difference in it. Or it may be 28. But no matter how fast the bow is, it's dropped a little bit, and you have more variance at 30 and 40 yards so that you can really fine-tune, because it will definitely show up if you're a yard or 2 off. It'll show up too high or too low where you can hardcore set that. And then when you walk back up to do the 20-yard, you can fine-tune it and get it exactly on 20 yards. I hope that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
kind of hard to explain on the phone, but
right.
That way, you're getting your most important yardage is 20. If we just had one pin set at 20 and you never shot a deer past 30, you could shoot one pin and be okay. But the ones that we need to be set exactly right are your 30 and your 40 and your 50, because those are, a higher percentage of a shot. You're going to magnify the flaws in your form, and you may miss. So we want those set correctly. So that's why I always call home base 30 and 40. And then once you get your gap set, and I stress this too, don't try to do it all in one day, because fatigue will set in, and you won't make as quality a shot. Get 2 pins set today, come out there fresh, shoot your 5 shots, get loosened up, and then start setting the rest of them. Take a couple of days to get your 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 set. Then once you have your gap set, you'll never have to touch that gap again. You can gang adjust on the sides, unless you change the arrow weight or the speed of the bow. Then you'll have to fine tune everything.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because I've seen so many people, myself included, they've tried to use the dot on the target to sight in their bow. But like you were saying, as you're starting to shoot more, especially if you're trying to do it all in one day, your pin's going to be floating around a lot more, because you're going to be getting tired. Your shot's not going to be as clean, just because of course you're getting tired. And the idea of having the line, I saw that on there and I thought, man, that's brilliant, because that's something I never thought of before. And the idea of having the level line is perfect, because it can show you if you're shooting high, if you need to adjust your pin because you're shooting high, or if you're shooting low. And I thought that was just a brilliant way of doing it. I guess that's why you're in the position you're in.
Yeah, and when you're shooting at a dot, you're trying to hold the bow steady 360 degrees. So like if you're float to 1 o'clock, you jerk it back down. So you're not just worried about up and down, you're worried about 360 degrees. Now once I get the bow sighted in with those lines, what I like to do, and this is silly, but this is what I like to do. Rather than drawing let's just say a 50% piece black dot on there, is I like to cut a 1-inch square out of the cardboard. I like shooting at cardboard. Like I have a big 4-foot target, and I put a piece of cardboard on it. And the reason I like the cardboard is the cardboard holds the arrow. So many of us have bag targets. Well, when you shoot a bag target, your arrow goes in, and then it droops down, and then you're concerned about hitting the side of the arrow, or you look down there. I'm all about instant gratification, so that I'm gaining confidence. The whole reason you practice is to gain confidence. So if I've got cardboard in the target, my arrow goes through the cardboard into the target, and it goes in perfectly straight. How many times have we ever shot into a bag target, which stops the arrow well, but you look down there, you take a glance, at 30 yards, and with your naked eye, or you throw up your binoculars right quick, and you're looking at the nocks, and the nocks look like it's an 8-inch group. But then when you walk down there, it's really a 4-inch group. That because your arrows are actually kind of sprayed out, and then when you get down there, it's like, oh man, for the last 5 minutes, I've been thinking that I shot an 8-inch group. I'm not shooting good, and now I have to rechange my emotions, because I'm actually shooting a little group better than I am. With that cardboard, it gives you instant gratification or instant feedback as to how you're actually hitting. So you don't go through that wide range of emotions of, I'm doing good, I'm doing bad, I'm not doing that good. Oh yeah, I am doing good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it definitely does. And do you actually like secure it onto the back target, or is it a separate piece of cardboard that's standing in front of it?
Ideally, you want dead airspace so that the cardboard's straight. If you can, put it about 4 inches in front of the target, if you can. A lot of times I'll build a frame, so I just staple it to the wood frame, and then it's out in front of it. So when the arrow goes in, it's perfectly straight. So a tight group looks like a tight group. You get instant feedback. Now, this is another thing that I do, is to increase that speed of great feedback, positive feedback, is I cut that 1-inch square. Okay, so if I hit that 1-inch square, like as I'm cutting a shot loose, shooting good back tension, you're not following the arrow. You don't know when the shot's going off. You execute a shot, it's a surprise. So basically, you can't see the arrow go in there. I don't have time to react. I have to look and see the knock in the target. But I can get quicker feedback if I'm shooting at a hole in the target. Like if I hear it go pop, then I know I hit the cardboard. But if I hear it go, I know I hit it's instant gratification. It's like if I hear it go, it means I hit the square, and it's just like, yes, instantly. So it's a great feeling. It's like instantly I know I hit that square. I don't have to look. I can do it all by ear. I just go, boom, I hit that hole. But if I hear pop, I know I was around it. And I can still see I got a tight group. But if I hear, if I shoot 6 shots and 4 of them hit the black hole, instantly, without even walking down there, without even picking up my binoculars, I know, holy crap, I just nailed it. I nailed it. And that seems trivial, I know, but that's the thought process I have, and that helps me as far as gaining confidence and having great practice sessions. The more black holes I hit, the better I feel. And there is no defining line. It's like, well, that ain't a bad group. It's like, no, either you're in that hole or you're out of that hole. There's no in between.
Right. Yeah. That immediate feedback, it does, it does play a huge role in, like you were saying, your emotions and everything too. Cause I mean, you can see that in really just about anything that anybody practices at, especially, archery and that kind of thing, is having that immediate feedback. It's seems to be, certainly, I think that's why people they use the binoculars to look down range immediately so they can see exactly what it is and see how they need to adjust. And, by adding that cardboard, it seems to make it easier on you.
Oh yeah, and it makes the arrows go in straight too, because there's nothing worse than having there's so many reasons, but you have a droopy arrow and then you shoot that second arrow and then you cut that arrow in half, and all of a sudden you just lost $10 and you can't supersize your Happy Meal.
Right. Definitely. So I want to touch on one more thing with you. It was choosing arrows. So what kind of resources do you recommend for people that are trying to figure out which arrow they need to have for, let's say, whitetail, or if they need to have a different arrow for elk? What kind of resources do you suggest? Because I mean, the charts are all over the place as far as recommending grain and all that kind of thing. So what do you suggest as far as choosing the right arrow for the animal you're hunting?
Well, there's a lot of different scenarios, meaning whether you're a woman, a child, or depending on what poundage and how efficient your bow is. I'm a big proponent of, and I've preached this for years, long before it was even a topic, was FOC. I'm real big on heavy arrows. I'm not going to say like extremely Cape Buffalo heavy arrows, but for North American big game, I like a heavy arrow, and I like heavy FOC. FOC is front of center percentage of balance. A good analogy of how FOC helps is, let's just say I had a mop handle, a 5-foot long mop handle, and I took and I slung it. It's going to go end over end and end over end because it's equally weighted from front to back. All right. Then I take that same mop handle and I put a 2-pound ball on one end, and I sling it with the same energy and the same force. We know just from physics that mop handle will not make a rotation because it'll be flying through the air like Thor's hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Where that I'm not going to use the right terminology because I'm not a physicist, but my redneck analogy is it's almost being pulled through the air, because the mass weight that's on there, once that weight is set in motion, the light mop handle follows the heavy weight that's on the end of the mop handle. Same way goes with an arrow. So you can have too heavy, because if you have too much weight on the front, you break down the spine and the responsiveness of the arrow. So if you are playing with, if you're looking at charts, by all means, look at the charts of whatever manufacturer arrow that you're using. Then you want to err on the stiff side. So many people get caught up in speed, and they say, well, I'm right on the line of shooting a 340 spined arrow and a 400. Well, I'm just going to go with the 400 because it's lighter. Well, a too weak of an arrow is a big problem. Whereas in my opinion, and I haven't had anybody give me a great explanation on this, but if you're shooting a release and a shoot-through style rest, a drop-away rest or a whisker biscuit, or 95% of all the rest that we shoot as a release archer, in my opinion, you can't shoot too stiff of an arrow, because the stiffness of the arrow actually absorbs the energy of the bow. Once you're achieving the correct stiffness, I don't think that you can shoot too stiff of an arrow. So I always err toward the too stiff of an arrow, especially if you're going to be playing with heavier inserts to increase your FOC. Because the more weight you put on the front, it breaks down the spine of the arrow. And it makes if normally you've got a 20 grain insert on there, and then all of a sudden you put a 100 grain insert on there, coupled with your field point, that mass weight, whenever you load it up with the energy from the bow, makes the arrow bend, and it'll turn a 340 spined arrow normally would make it weaker because you have mass weight on the front. So always err towards too stiff of an arrow, and therefore you won't make a tuning decision that you'll regret by shooting too weak of a spine. That's number one. Whether you're going for FOC or not, always err towards the too stiff. And if you are going to play the FOC game, I would always upgrade to, if it says shoot a 340 and you're going to FOC, increase the insert weight, then I would go one step above and probably shoot a 300 spined arrow. FOC increases the mass weight, but not only does it increase the mass weight, but it puts it at the front of the arrow to where it's forgiving in the wind. FOC helps you in the wind. It helps you as far as forgiveness, the jitters that we have and the torque that we may have. It makes your flaws not as magnified. It puts more mass weight in the arrow. And just like if you built a 500 grain arrow with 8% FOC and a 500 grain arrow with 18% FOC, they weigh the same, so you think that they're going to penetrate the same. The higher FOC is going to penetrate better because the mass weight is going to get through the animal quicker, and it's going to pull the remainder of the arrow through there. So it helps as far as tuning, forgiveness, and definitely wind and in penetration. So, if we're checking off the pros and cons, there's very few cons in shooting it. So many people get caught up with speed, and that's the downfall. Meaning, like if you should take the energy and the efficiency of the bow that is so. They publicize these speeds that shoots 330 feet a second, IBO legal, 70 pounds, 350 grain arrow at 30-inch draw. We should take the innovations and the efficiency of these new bows and put them towards a real forgiving and a quiet arrow. And like the heavier it is, the quieter the bow, the more forgiving it's going to be. The quieter it's going to shoot, the quieter it is in flight. It penetrates more. There's just so many pros to that. So many people get caught up in speed. They're thinking like, I need to be shooting 330 for a second so this deer won't jump the string. Through testing, I think 280, let's just say you're an average guy that pulls, 65 to 75 pounds, and you're, a 29-inch draw. I think if you can get a 500 grain arrow flying anywhere from like 260 to about 290 feet per second, that is an excellent, excellent arrow. That's top of the chart. You don't have to do that. But when you're shooting 330 feet per second versus 270 feet per second, you have to go beyond 40 yards to see the tightness in your pin gap, and you're not gonna outrun the deer's reaction of dropping the string. So the speed is not going to help you, and it's actually making your bow noisier and less forgiving. So therefore, your groups open up, which accuracy is always going to win out over speed. So if I could, make it to where more people would understand that shooting a slow, forgiving, heavy hitting, making your bow quiet is way more important than a fast miss. A slow hit is better than a fast miss. I got to get a shirt with that on there.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's very helpful, and that's a great way of putting it. That helped me understand FOC a lot more because you hear that phrase all the time, the FOC, the front of center. But I think the way you explained it was perfect for a lay person like myself to be able to understand it, because the way I kind of visualized it was if you throw like a pebble and hit somebody with it, it's not going to hurt. Even if you throw it fast, it's not going to hurt nearly as much as if you throw like a baseball-sized rock at somebody. Even if it's a little bit slower, it's still going to hurt a lot more because there's more weight to it.
That's right. Yeah, it's like it's momentum. Basically, there's been a Dr. Ashby. If you'll look up the Ashby Foundation, all his research is unbiased. It's just a phenomenal wealth of knowledge. Actually, I'm going to be doing some posting on Dr. Ashby. I was fortunate enough. He visited friends right here, and he came to my store several times. And he's got so much information on FOC and heavy arrows and single bevel broadheads, and if you're into penetration and having the most efficient killing sticks, he's got a wealth of knowledge about it. But the forgiveness is I built bows. I've hunted with 340 feet per second, 10 years ago, back when I've tried everything, and honestly, the heavier FOC and the heavier is gonna perform way better for you. I mean, it's hands down, it's just better. It's there's kind of a myth here. Kinetic energy, the formula for figuring out kinetic energy is feet per second squared times mass weight of the arrow, the grain weight, and then divided by 450,240 gives you your kinetic energy. Well, when people know that formula, this is what they do. They go in and they weigh I'll just give you an example. They take a 300 grain arrow and they do the formula, and naturally it's going to be faster. So the kinetic energy, let's just say it pops up at 69.2 is the kinetic energy. Well, you'll do the heavy arrow, like say the 500 grain arrow, going quite a bit slower, and you do the FOC, and it's nearly about the same. So you're thinking, it might be like one pound more kinetic energy. So then you think that, this is what 99% of the people do. They say, well, man, if I'm only gaining one, I want that speed. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. And listen closely on this. Kinetic energy is only measured at the height of the animal. Meaning, yes, that arrow has that kinetic energy, and kinetic energy is used more for ballistics with guns than it is with arrows and archery, because archery is killed by massive hemorrhaging, not by shock.
Yeah.
Mass weight gives you momentum and therefore penetration. So the analogy that you used was perfect, Tyler. Like if I took a ping pong ball and I threw it 200 miles an hour, or I took a brick and threw it 50 miles an hour, I would much rather get hit with a ping pong ball going 200 than I would a brick at 50. Because the energy of the ping pong ball going 200 is going to hit you, and it's going to disperse out left, right, up, down, and it's not going to cause much damage. Whereas that brick, it's going to take a little bit of meat to slow that thing down. It's going to hurt. So with a heavier arrow, you want the momentum, the force to continue. It's going to take it to push, almost like when you're driving a T-post in the ground, why don't you use a claw hammer? You grab that sledgehammer, because the mass weight is going to drive it better. Same difference. A heavier arrow, you got to have something within reason. You don't want to have like a 1,200 grain arrow to where you're shooting like a bow fishing arrow at deer. But more mass weight does make things penetrate better.
Yeah, man, that was very helpful for me. I know it's going to be helpful for a lot of people as well. And, just the amount of knowledge that you have about archery is just awesome. And I'm glad we were able to get this squared away and be able to have you on the Rice Elite podcast. Cause like I said, this is going to be really helpful, especially with archery seasons coming up and everybody, getting excited about the hunting seasons approaching. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you being on the Rice Elite podcast with me, man.
Man, I love it. This is what brought me to the dance, like we talked about earlier. Right. So, I guess I'll be on my deathbed and I'll be still spitting out numbers and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that know a lot of things. It's just, and I may be wrong on some of the things, but I know from, all the years of me tinkering with them, these things have been proof. I mean, it's proof positive. These things kind of work, and if you can be more consistent and we're there to dull broadheads, and we're there to have happy gut piles.
Absolutely. That gut pile is it's the true trophy, because once you have that gut pile, then you got a freezer full and everything kind of worked out for you.
Man, yeah.
So where can they connect with you? Where can they, check out more of your content? Because I mean, the hour and 15 minutes that we spent on that is just the tip of the iceberg with the amount of knowledge you have. So where can they connect with you more?
Yeah, we got stuff on, anything bone collector, bonecollector.com, on those social media pages for Bone Collector, as well as mine is T-Bone Outdoors, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then I'm going to start doing more stuff. I got a YouTube channel, but haven't been posting much to it in recent. But we're fixing to start ramping that back up very soon. So, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll make sure I have all that information down in the details of the show here once it posts. And again, I can't thank you enough for being on the Rice Elite podcast with me. And if you get your own podcast, let me know, because I'm going to be first in line to be listening to it. So
I certainly appreciate that. Yeah, anytime, just holler at me. I really enjoy it. So hopefully a little bit of tidbits we talked about may help somebody out, and I hope everybody has a great Corona-free fall this year.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. So there you go. There is some sound advice from one of the best in the business, Travis T-Bone Turner. I appreciate you guys listening to the Rice Elite podcast today. Make sure you guys connect with T-Bone if you're not already on his social media platforms and also on his website, tboneoutdoors.com. If you guys got any value from today's episode, be sure to leave a rating and review on the podcast platform that you're listening on. Those ratings and reviews, they go a long way in being able to help organically grow the Rice Elite podcast to be able to reach more and more people. The Rice Elite podcast is listener supported, so if you guys would like to support the Rice Elite podcast and help us grow the audio experience, then find out how you can support the Rice Elite podcast today. That information can also be found in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to the Rice Elite podcast. That way you guys don't miss out on any of the future episodes. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next week.